Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Becoming Anchored podcast. We're so very glad that you're with us today. We have a very exciting episode for you all, so we'll get into that in just a second. I am Lauren Jackson, one of the hosts of the Becoming Anchored podcast. This is Laura Deneen, our other beautiful host. We are part of a group practice in Brentwood, Tennessee, Anchored Counseling Company. We work with and see people of all populations, the lifespan. We work with different presenting issues such as anxiety, depression, grief and loss, eating disorders, life transition, and everything in between. We really love what we do, and we're so excited to have this new platform to connect with you guys. So quick disclaimer before we do jump in. This episode and this podcast is meant for informational purposes only. It's not meant to substitute professional mental health in any way. And so if you find that as you're listening to our content in this episode that you might benefit from therapy, we would highly encourage you to reach out to either your nearest licensed professional counselor or reach out to us because we'd love to work with you. So this episode today, I know I introduced myself and Laura. We have a guest with us today. So excited. This is Emily Murray. She is a registered dietitian here in the Brentwood area. She's pretty close to our office. So Emily specializes in working with eating disorders. Her team does. Her and her team really focusing on the nutritional side of things, obviously being a dietitian. So anyways, I won't talk too much about Emily. I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself a little bit more, but we're so excited to have her. Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much, Lauren. And Thank you for the introduction for Emily. So if you're new to this podcast, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Lauren had this idea about a year ago now to start a podcast. And of course, I jumped in and was so excited. And so we really talk about just first and foremost us as human beings and kind of the intricacy of just all the hardships that we go through in life. And then we have the beautiful opportunity as well to sit with clients on a daily basis. And so we also offer our, hopefully, wisdom for you as therapists. And it's such sacred work, such a gift to see clients. And so first and foremost, we want this podcast just to be a space for us to be human with y'all, and then also to hopefully share some of our wisdom, lessons, things that we've learned as therapists over the years. So we're so glad to have you. Thank you for being here. Today, we are going to be talking about why body acceptance is key on the journey to long-term recovery. And we are just so thrilled to have Emily and her wisdom. And towards the end, we'll talk about ways that you can find her. But yeah, we were trying to decide on what we wanted to talk about, and this just felt so important today. So welcome, Emily. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yeah. So, gosh, I know that this is a big topic, and I feel like I start there every time where I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so many different things that I could say. But Emily, when you think about kind of this concept of body acceptance, or when you're working with clients that are reporting a lot of body image distress, as a dietitian, I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe your how-tos and like how you're working with clients when they're telling you that maybe they're experiencing shame or anger or disgust towards their bodies. What comes up for you as a dietitian?
Yeah. So I see this a lot. In my work, I work mostly with clients who are on the eating disorders, disordered eating spectrum. And a part of my job is to, give education and talk to people about, their nutritional needs and what they need and how they can get those things in. And that's so important. And there's a lot of misinformation about all of that. And at the same time, for so many people, there's this fear of weight gain that's really, holding them back. Fear of weight gain is a really, really big one. Or, body disgust, body hatred, shame about body, difficulty tolerating body in the here and now. And so when I'm asking them to eat more food, a lot of people associate that with gaining weight. And so, there's a lot of barriers to that. So I've definitely, evolved in my role as an eating disorder dietitian. I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, I'm going to need some things in my back pocket to to help some of these clients and to help them, come to a place where maybe they don't, can at least tolerate their bodies, much less, feed their bodies what they need. And so I love this idea of body acceptance as a pathway towards that. And I think it's really important that we talk about like what body acceptance is not. Like, it doesn't mean that you love every single feature about your physical appearance, about your weight, about your body every day for the rest of your life. Like, that's not going to be realistic in the culture that we live in, and it's not human. And even that, like, so much of, I'm sure what you guys see and with eating disorder recovery is like healing from perfectionism. Like, that's a perfectionistic goal, to only have positive feelings, to only have positive experiences in your body. Of course, people want that, right? It's heartbreaking to have, uncomfortable feelings and, mean thoughts and all that towards our bodies. But I think even just starting from a realistic place of like, what does body acceptance look like? Does it have to mean, this thing or that thing? And then how can we even break that down even more to start moving towards that? And it's not going to be like you receive a piece of education and the next day you love your body, right? It's a long, slow process of meeting your body moment by moment, day by day.
Yeah. Emily, I almost hear you saying that like body acceptance versus like positive body image or loving your body is acceptance is more of a choice. Like, I'm going to choose daily to validate my feelings, notice what I'm thinking, and take care of my body, listen to it, notice what it needs, put on clothes that feel good, whatever. Like, it's more of an active like choice and decision that you're making versus this like trying to always feel good about your body every single day. Is almost what I'm hearing a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like understanding that, there are going to be things that come up and there's going to be grief, as we change, as we shift, as we age. There's going to be grief, is a big piece of it too. But showing up for your here and now body and not making how it looks being like the prerequisite for that, or how you feel about how it looks, or what your thoughts are about how it looks, and taking the focus off of how do I look, how am I appearing to the world, versus like, how can I live in my body today? Like, my body is a miracle. My body is a gift. Like, I have one life here on this earth, and like, couldn't I be made for more than appearing a certain way? And I think, that's what we can kind of see a lot, is that the appearance importance for someone that's struggling with body image, it's like, it's really high up here. And it's like, that's really hard because we can't control everything about our appearance and our weight. And even if we can, or we could, like, that's a dangerous game to try. It leads to eating disorders and malnutrition and depression and all the things.
Yeah. We talk a lot on the podcast just about like living according to our values. So that's what popped in my mind when you were talking about kind of really pointing that out in clients, like just this kind of when they first come to us, especially, or even if they're struggling on their body image journey or what have you, really shifting back to what we value if we are struggling can be a helpful intervention, I think, and really looking at, okay, if today I am really struggling with my appearance, or I'm having all of these really intrusive or maybe unhelpful thoughts, or maybe maybe my body has changed and, my clothing size has changed, or whatever it might be, really shifting back to my values can be a helpful way, I think, along the body acceptance journey to bringing some of that importance on appearance down and reorienting to my value system. So that really stood out to me as you were chatting just now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that you do a lot of values work with your clients too, as a dietitian. And we kind of tag team that, right? As therapists and dietitians, like, hey, how are your choices lining up with your value system? And how might that be a path towards your body acceptance journey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what we all see a lot is that like, there can be a push-pull of like, part of me values this, a part of me values this, and it can kind of be confusing to tease out, but, it's all definitely a part of the journey. Even when thinking about values and body image and all of that, I think it's important to consider like where are my beliefs about bodies coming from, and where are my beliefs about my body and values about bodies by body, where might those things have come from? And am I confusing, my thoughts about my body with facts about my body? And could there actually be another narrative and another way to engage and be with my body?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 And that kind of goes along with what you first shared around that fear of weight gain. I mean, with the culture that we live in, it makes sense that that fear pops up for clients, of course. And then we add on a possible parental figure or caregiver that maybe, withheld love because of a child, God forbid, right? Because of a child's body size or whatever it might have been. So it's like, okay, yeah, where does this fear of gaining weight, where does this fear of accepting your body and being okay with your current body, what is that rooted in? And really teasing that apart, I think, in our work is important as well.
Yeah. I wonder, like, and, I'm even just thinking out loud as well as we're having this conversation, what it looks like for our clients to practice body acceptance, and building that skill set while they're having body image distress. Like what does that like, possibly look like for people or for our clients? And Emily, I'm curious, like what comes up for you, or what work you do with your, clients around that.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So it can look something like, us talking about, making nutritional changes because maybe we're not eating enough. That's often an issue that I'm working with. We're not eating enough. We're not meeting our nutritional needs. And, that the fear of weight gain pops up. Or we are meeting our nutritional needs, or we're taking steps towards our recovery goals and our weight starts to change. So those are kind of the two places that it pops up. I think in some ways psychoeducation around fear and anxiety, can be helpful in how that works. And even just thinking about like, what are the pros and cons of approaching this versus avoiding it? What are the pros and cons of, maybe, continuing to be on the path of, nourishing your body and taking care of your body and giving it water and food and all the things, versus like self-neglecting it. And how does that, how does restricting food, binging, purging, all the different things, how can that actually make body image worse. So we talk about, those things. And, I think even just starting with like, hey, if you hate your body, like we're not even going to think about feeling positive towards it. We're going to practice tolerating it. Right. And that's distress tolerance. And so I'll ask like, hey, what have you talked with your therapist about distress tolerance? Like what skills do you have in your toolbox? It's going to be really important that when you're at your meals, when you're having these negative thoughts, that you have some of those at your base, especially, if on a scale of 1 to 10, your anxiety is at like, 7, 8, 9, 10, God forbid, it's like, okay, we have to be using those tools before we do anything. We don't need to make a decision. We don't need to, nothing. We need to go use those tools. And so that's kind of some of the process of what that can look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all love a good distress tolerance skill, right? Like I don't have an eating disorder anymore. I identify as fully recovered, but I still certainly use distress tolerance skills. So I think all of us can benefit from those skills. And one thing that stood out to me about what you just shared, so y'all know this, right? Because you know me, you both know me well, but I can tend to set really big goals for myself, and I'm a dreamer. And this, what you said around like, okay, let's work on body tolerance before we move to even this place of acceptance, or maybe some people get down to body positivity, right? But it's really this idea of let's set realistic goals for yourself and supporting the client in not only identifying the goals, but in practical steps towards tolerating their bodies versus this like huge leap that some of us, hi, me, that we tend to do in our minds around goal setting. So I love that you shared that, because we really want to support clients in setting realistic goals for their body image versus like a really, really big ask that feels undoable or just not attainable.
Yeah. So with kind of our bigger picture topic of body acceptance being this kind of foundational piece to long-term, eating disorder recovery, why is it so foundational? Like for you as the dietitian on the team, like on the, multidisciplinary treatment team or whatever, from like the nutritional side of things, why is that important in like that long-term recovery piece of things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think learning how to accept, and by accept, I mean be with, tolerate, critically challenge, move through, all the things, uncomfortable body image moments. If you are someone where your negative body image experiences really impact what you eat, if you aren't able to, learn how to accept those things and move through, like your nutrition's going to suffer. Quality of life is going to really suffer. Yeah. So that's just like one of the big pieces if that's your struggle. And it's like we can't control our thoughts, right? We can't control how our bodies are going to change. Like we think we can sometimes. We think we can escape it and control it and manipulate it. And maybe we can to an extent until we can't anymore. And so those are things that we cannot control. But we can control, our tolerance and our ability to be with some of those uncomfortable things in a way that it's, not holding us captive in our relationship with food.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're really supporting clients and creating a little bit more space. That's really what I heard and what you just shared from, okay, I have this distressing thought or maybe this distressing perception. What choice might I have available to me, whether that's a recovery choice or maybe a choice that's maybe more rooted in the eating disorder, and that space even is important in the recovery process.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for sure. And I'm sure you guys have maybe talked some about this. I have history of an eating disorder and have been through the recovery process. And so I can just speak to this, just like this was my experience. Like when you don't have the skills and the awareness of like what makes up body image and body image experiences, and like, oh, this isn't like just about my body, it's about my thoughts and my emotions and all the stuff that comes up with my body. When you don't have that awareness and that practice, it can really feel like it's happening to you.
Mm.
And it can feel like really helpless and powerless, and like, how did my brain get this way? And like, am I broken? And like, what this is so superficial, and all the types of thoughts that come up. And that awareness piece is so huge. And learning, I think something that can be so key that you guys see all the time too is like learning the difference between having a negative body image thought come into your brain and like feeding that thought is just like foundational, I think, in body acceptance too. Like I've said earlier, again, we can't control maybe all the thoughts that diet culture and our parents and our peers and our friend at the gym and all these things are going to put into our brains. But what we do have control over is how we respond and how we take care of ourselves.
I think that's such a key part of the body image work that we're doing with clients in eating disorder recovery, disordered eating recovery, chronic dieting recovery, right? All of that is this shift from the external to the internal, right? Like I'm only dictated by what happens externally and what comes at me, and I'm like victim to that essentially. To I am empowered to make choices and do something different with how I feel and do something different with my thoughts. And that, like I said, it feels so fundamental to this body image journey that we go on, from maybe negative body image, hating our bodies, to that tolerance and that acceptance piece. And maybe sometimes that positivity towards our body is that learning that skill of, man, we do have so much more control over things than maybe we think, or than maybe our eating disorder is trying to convince us of. Because man, that eating disorder tries to convince us of all these crazy things that are just so not true, right? So yeah, that empowerment piece is what I hear, and just what feels really important.
Yeah. And that's where something like yoga, and I know I was recommended yoga like in the beginning of my recovery, and I was like, that's so stupid. It's not exercise. That, it's like, okay. But yoga is such a good like place to practice like body autonomy and choice and agency. With our bodies, like we get to decide how we do the posture. We get to decide if we take this pose or the next pose or whatever, and so that can be really foundational and healing as someone who used to be very opposed to yoga. So, yeah.
That was my story as well. I remember kind of having that eye roll moment with my therapist when she recommended yoga. I'm like, okay. But
I feel like that is a pretty common response I'll get from like, any client kind of new to this process, where we are trying to do some of that like reconnection work of, okay, let's like even just like pause and breathe and notice. It's like kind of a big eye roll, like, okay, come on. So, yeah.
Yeah, it can be really hard to those like small moments of body attunement. Again, back to like the type of clients that, we work with in the practice, and just those like kind of unrealistic goals, or maybe even difficulty noticing the small wins. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying, Lauren. Like, okay, let's pause. Like it can feel, I think, silly for clients. And really, this is my story too, of like, why would I pause to take a breath? Like, why would I do that? And body attunement, I think, is just such an important piece as well on this journey to body acceptance. Like noticing if I'm hungry for a snack, or noticing if I need to like take a breath or take a walk outside, or what my nervous system needs. And all of that can be really can enrich clients' experience in terms of what it means for them to accept their bodies.
Well, Laura, that's where our power comes from. When we are connected with our bodies, that's where our empowerment comes from, right? Like that is like the thing that gives us the choice to do something different, is when we have that connection with our body. And that's like the very thing that our eating disorder, disordered eating, dieting, whatever, tries to keep us disconnected from. And it's like, that's like almost the secret is the whatever, right? It's like when we can get reconnected and reattuned, it's like that is where our empowerment lies. And so I think that's such a good point.
Absolutely. And it's like we are deserving of paying attention to ourselves. Right? Like I think a lot of times clients with eating disorders are paying attention, or maybe they're caring for other people so well. And the clients that we work with, I know, just like have such big hearts and are such loving individuals, and they're empaths and sensitive, and they've got all these amazing gifts. And with that comes oftentimes it's like, oh, I don't deserve to take a breath for myself. And so really doing some of that corrective, I think, therapy and nutrition therapy around that. I can pause to eat lunch today can just be really helpful, and paying attention, I think, is a really important piece as well in the body acceptance journey. Yeah. What's coming up for you, Emily? I can kind of see
I see your cogs turning.
I'm just thinking. Yeah, I mean, and so much of it, like you guys get into this in therapy a lot, is like body acceptance is self-acceptance too, and it's like it's shame recovery, and it's it's learning to see myself objectively, like flaws and all, and still loving myself and treating myself with a lot of tenderness and kindness. And that's something that I see, I often bring in like self-compassion and trying to use some of that, around food choices, around body image, whatever. And there's just normally a lot of resistance to that. It's just totally new. It's not a way, it's not natural for a lot of people. It can feel weak or lazy or making excuses or whatever. But self-compassion, I think, is another piece of body acceptance that can be really helpful. And I think for me, so again, I was one of those people that was really resistant to self-compassion. And what I tell my clients is like, hey, I understand there's some resistance there. It's like, it can feel painful to show yourself self-compassion when you have not been living that way. But I think we have to think about, is it effective to not show myself self-compassion? Like, where is that really getting me in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with my body? Like, is that really helping me, or is it maybe causing more problems?
Yeah, we have this faulty thinking that if I can like shame myself into motivating myself to do something, or if I can criticize myself enough, then I'll meet this goal. And it's just, it has consequences, right? And so that motivational interviewing piece that you're talking about with clients around like, hey, where has that landed you? Yeah.
Well, and that's so much deeply rooted in culture and society, like shaming to change, right? As we like learn it, like, our whole lives kind of growing up. And even Emily, what you said around like flaws and all related to our body and maybe even our appearance, it almost begs the question too, where did we learn to believe that our body appearance wise is flawed in some way if it doesn't look like this or if it doesn't look like that, right? So those are just like, can be just really interesting, curious questions to like ask yourself and, explore with your therapist and your nutrition dietitian.
Gosh, I feel like we could talk on this subject for So, I mean, we could say so many different things and so many other things in addition to what's already been shared today. But Emily, thank you for your time. I know that it's so, so precious. And we are just so honored that you are on the show, and we'll certainly have you back on to hear more about your wisdom that you have to share with clients. But just out of curiosity, how can people find you? I'd love for you to share with our listeners kind of how people can find you.
Yeah, so I'm two places mostly. So our website is murraynutritionco.com, and then you can follow me on Instagram at emilymurray.rd.
Awesome. Thank you. And y'all, Emily Murray is just phenomenal. So if you're in the Tennessee area, please look her up and follow her on Instagram. Her content is just amazing and so life-giving. And so I think refreshing is the word that comes to mind, right? In a world and culture where we're inundated with diet culture. So go follow her right now. Y'all know as we close, we give some homework and we give an affirmation as well. So Emily, I would love for you to give some homework on the topic that we have talked about today.
Yeah, I would love to. So even just thinking about what Lauren just said about flaws, like I think that could be a great journaling prompt. Like, where did I learn that my body has flaws? Like, where did I learn, that XYZ feature, or that certain weights or gaining weight or, being fat or becoming, all of these different things. Like, where did some of these beliefs come from? And just kind of being curious about that, I think could be a great journal prompt for homework.
Thank you. Yeah, we love giving homework in the practice, and I know you do as well. Yeah. So love it. And Lauren is going to close us out with an affirmation.
Yes. So I want to leave you guys with the words, my journey, my body acceptance journey is not linear, and it is not a final destination.
So good. Thank you, Emily, for being on the show. It's truly an honor. We adore you, and thank you. Okay, chat soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.